All right, good afternoon and welcome. Today we're going to be painting a rainy street scene in Paris. But before we get started, if you wouldn't mind giving this video a thumbs up, and if you like what you see afterwards, consider subscribing. I'm going to have 3 to 4 new videos coming out per week, so you'll want to stay updated. As always, if you like the demo that's been painted in this video, they are all for sale in my store, and the link for that is in the description. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to put our reference photo up here on the right side of the screen, and as you can see, it looks a little bit different than my sketch. Really what I've used this photo for is to get that iconic Parisian kind of roofscape and city feel, but I've added in some cars and figures, and we're going to be doing, like I said, a rainy scene, but this one is going to be a little bit more in the daytime. There's going to be a bit more light. The reference photo is a bit of a nocturne scene, so anyways, let's go ahead and get started. I've already got our palette wet over here, but I'm going to put a little water on our paper. And right off the bat, something we're going to be doing a little bit different today is normally I like to start with the sky, but we're actually going to do, oops, put that little drop of water there, that's okay. We're going to do these two figures first, and the reason for that is that we're going to be using the dark tones that are going to be underneath this awning to sort of highlight and bring them out. And so I want to go ahead and have them painted, A, as a reminder, but B, so that I can get a good idea for whether or not the tones are dark enough when we get to that point to bring them out. I'm just doing their heads and just the beginnings of their legs, really. We'll do a lavender for this person. Okay, a little burnt sienna there for the face. And I'm just reaching in. This is some warm gray. Right. There we go. And that's going to be the start of those two. I'm going to give this another spray. And let's go ahead and get our sky going. I'm going to just take some dirty water, and I'm just going to work my way through like this. Okay? Now, as we build our sky up, I want the top to be fairly cool, and we're going to warm up as we work our way down. So I'm going to grab some Cobalt Blue. I'm just going to do a couple of strokes through there, right like that. I want to make sure to leave some white. I'm going to grab some burnt sienna, warm it up a little bit. And let's cool it back up again as we get closer to the bottom. Okay, now I'm going to let that dry for a minute, and you'll see there's a lot of holes of white in there. I'm going to take my paper towel and we're going to soften those up, but for now I'm just going to leave this alone, and we're going to come back and add some darker colors, and we're going to soften those whites up. All right, so let's go ahead and put some color on our buildings. Not really concerned about temperature or anything like that. Just trying to put something down so that when we come back later on our second wash, it'll be a little bit easier to darken them up. Grab some cobalt. Let's put that in there. I am going to, though, be careful. I'm going to paint a kind of reddish orange on this awning here so that we can really pop and cut that out later on. So I'm going to grab my slightly smaller brush. This is Mayan Orange. Get a little bit of that going. And it's a very vibrant color. It's really fun to paint with. All right, we'll just pull that right across. No big deal. And I'm going to let that dry a little bit. And in the meantime, let's add some darker color to our sky. I'm going to come underneath some of these shapes, and I'm just going to throw some dark streaks through there. Kind of some warmer color, especially at the top there. Okay. Give it a spray. We want it to really soften and kind of melt together. And then, as I mentioned, You see how these sharp edges around this white here? What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take and just soften them up a little bit. I like those light areas, but I just don't want them quite as sharp, right? Okay, that looks all right. And I'm just trying to squint a little bit and get a feel for how our sky's looking. All right. I don't think that's too bad. It's always hard. You don't want to overwork it. Of course, I think that's kind of the secret with all of watercolor in general. I'm going to leave it alone. I think that'll be good for now. All right, I've got a little puddle of water, though, going on the end of that awning. And let's work down and just keep putting a bit of color on everything. Come down here. Really not going to negatively paint anything except for those two figures here. I'm going to grab my smaller brush, pick up with some water. I'm going to make sure to just carefully work around them. And it's okay if it bleeds in a little bit into the shapes that we painted, but I want to do my best. A smaller brush can help with that because it typically won't carry as much water. Okay, I've kind of got them protected. Now I'm going to grab just pure water and drag it through here because these are going to be windshields of cars and some other lighter areas, and so I don't want to add too much paint in there. But as we get down to the bottom here, we're going to darken things up. I am looking at our sky again. I'm just trying to judge it, you know. I'm going to add a little bit more dark in there, in those dark streaks I had. Just something like that, I think. I'm going to add a little paint in those. It was a little light, I think. Okay. Oops, that looks strange. That looks better. Yep, that looks good. I may add just one more here at the top just to kind of help frame it a little bit. Skies are funny. They really just take, I mean, honestly, nothing can replace experience when it comes to painting them. You kind of have to feel them out a little bit. All right, moving down to our foreground here. I'm going to keep it light in the beginning, and then we'll darken it up as we get towards the bottom. Okay, I'm going to warm it up a little bit. Yep. And when I'm doing a foreground that is going to be used for reflections, I'm really just kind of varying the cools and warms. I am going to get darker as we get towards the bottom, but if you go a little too warm or a little too cool, that's okay. Reflection paintings are some of the easiest to paint, especially for watercolor. The medium is very well suited to it. They look very intimidating, but they are dead simple. All right, I'm going to soften up a couple more of these hard areas in our sky. Just a little bit there. Yeah, I think that'll be a really nice looking sky. All right, let's keep working here. Got a little lavender. Let's add some, I don't know, yellow ochre. Have a little fun with it. A little bit of that warm gray. We'll just keep working our way. Yep. Give that a bit of a spray. Keep it alive. All right, a little more yellow ochre, a little burnt sienna, a little neutral gray. And we're just darkening it up. A little neutral tint, neutral gray. All right. That looks pretty good. Now, if there are some areas that are going to be lighter, such as these windshields or maybe this person's umbrella, I can come back and dab them a little bit. I'd rather have you worry about having a clean, consistent wash than trying to cut all these little things out. I typically, it's better to just come back and give them a little pat if you're too worried about them. All right, so with that being said, we're going to let this dry and we'll come back and start on our second wash. All right, we are back. Let's go ahead and get started with our second wash. If you've seen my previous videos, you know that we're going to start with the objects that are further in the distance and then work towards the ones that are closer. So we're going to start in this area here and work to this right side of the building, and then we'll start this building here. So I'm going to spray a little water on our paper just to get it moist, and we're going to get started. Now, I'm going to be keeping this building pretty neutral. I'm going to try to not keep it too warm or too cold. I shouldn't say cold, I guess cool is a better word. Alright, but I'm going to make sure to be leaving those little areas of light. Alright, and I do want to get this a little bit wetter, especially in the center here, because I want to give it that sort of a fadey, atmospheric feel. Alright, and so we're going to keep working. Okay. Just pulling a little bit of my Cobalt and Lavender, a little bit of that yellow ochre and burnt sienna. I think our sky turned out pretty nice as well. And here I'm just going to give the impressions of some windows. I may come back and cover those up, but for now I'd always rather leave that, leave those blocks of light than cut them out, you know. You can always take light away in watercolor, but it is very difficult to add it back. Okay. All right, working right along. Coming down to the tops of these cars here, I'm definitely going to be very careful, and we're going to come back and work this area here. I'm going to grab some really dark paint, kind of just poke along this roof line, right like that. Grab a smaller brush. I'm going to add in some little details. Paris always has an abundance of chimneys and lots of little things on their roofs, so definitely want to have that here. I'm going to grab some lavender. I want to add a cooler color through here. Yeah, just to mix it up a bit. All right. And because we got our paper wet, you can see it's leaked over a little bit into our awning, but that is okay. I am not worried about it. We're also going to come back through here and kind of dab that out just to, again, give that feeling of depth. You know, as things go further away, they either become lighter or less defined. And in this case, we're doing a little bit of both. Okay. All right. That looks okay for now. Right. Let's go ahead and get started on this building. And again, I'm going to keep an eye on this because I may come back and add things, may take things away, scratch some things out. I'm not sure yet. All right. We're going to start with the roof. The roof is going to be cooler than the rest of the building, so I'm just going to use what we've got started here, add some cobalt and lavender, and pull across. See what happens. I like those little kind of breaks that the building's giving, or the paint's giving us right now. Pull that down a little bit. Yep. Let's give it a little spray. Keep everything alive. And we're going to do those chimneys. The chimneys are a little bit warmer. That might be too warm. Yeah, it's way too warm. We're going to darken that up too. Let's do some sienna. Yeah, I think that looks better. Get some thick paint for the tops of them. All right, just adding some darkness there just to vary it up. Let's give it another spray. Oops, dropped my spray bottle. All right, now we're going to warm the building up. Again, I want to keep this very thick though. Here I'm going to leave a little line between that roof there. Could be some little windows. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to pull some vertical lines. And again, give that impression of windows, other things. Let's add some yellow ochre in there. Okay, now as we get down to the bottom, I'm going to throw some of that Mayan Orange in there that we used on that awning, just to kind of give a little bit of a, I guess, reflective value there. Yeah, that looks pretty nice. Give it another spray. I am going to just touch there because it was starting to bleed in a little bit. Okay, I'm going to darken this up down here near the bottom. And the nice thing that while this is wet is you can just make a couple of lines and it's going to bleed down in and blend itself into the painting, so don't worry about that too much. All right, touch that off. Just dry that windshield just a little bit. We're going to work on this dark area under the awning. Now this has got to be pretty dark because we're going to use it to cut out those figures there. Okay, so I'm going to use this larger brush, kind of pull it over towards them, and then I'll grab my smaller brush here in a second. Again, I want to leave some gaps of light in there. All right. Now the one thing I'm a little concerned about is it feels a little wet over here. So I may give them a little bit more room than I would normally, just because I'm going to expect that paint to kind of bleed over into the character a little bit more, but we'll probably come back and fix that a little bit. Put some dark down the edge of that car just to help really cut it out from the shadows. Draw some abstract lines over here. Draw some abstract lines over here. All right. And we're getting pretty close to working on these reflections. That's where this is going to get really fun. And this painting is going to come alive. I'm going to draw a little, or scrape a little reference line there. I did scrape right through my umbrella, but if I do that, it should be fine. And it's a little wet. You see how those lines start to disappear? Anytime you see that, it just means the paper is very wet. So I'm going to let it dry a bit more before I try it. We can check over here, but I would imagine, yeah, it's the same story. See how it disappears like that? All right, let's get to work on our cars. I'm going to take this paper towel. I'm just going to dry or blot through here just a little bit. It's starting to leak down a little too much. Okay. And I also need to try to firm up the line on the bottom of this thing. It might just be a little too wet right now, so we'll leave it alone and we'll come back and play with it. Let's work on these cars. So we're going to start on this car over here, And we're just going to get straight into it. Use that yellow ochre. Make this taxi. I'll grab some of that neutral gray. And as we work down on our cars, they're always going to get darker. Right. That looks good. All right, let's do this next car. Let's just kind of neutralize that one a little bit. It's off in the distance a bit more, so I don't care as much about the coloring on it. Okay, that's not too bad. And we'll do this car over here. This one, let's grab some lavender. Give it a bit of color. And same drill, I'm just going to darken it up as I move down the page. Okay. Now you can see these are already starting to bleed, which is great. Normally I'd be a little nervous, but since we're doing a rainy scene, that's actually going to help us out a bit here. I'm going to test this again to see if it's dried a bit. Yep, it's dried a little bit more. Probably going to come back in here and add some more windows as well. Yeah, something like that. But let's work on these reflections. This is where the fun part comes in. I'm going to grab this flat brush, and this is just a little, I don't know, it comes in like a $5 pack. I think it comes with 3 brushes at Blix. It's not a watercolor specific brush, but you don't really need it. Okay, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a dark area down at the bottom that we're going to work our reflections down into. And then we're just going to get going here. Okay, this car is yellow ochre, so I'm going to try to mimic that in the reflection. The most important thing here is it's just you want the reflections to go straight down. There's no angle to them. They should be going straight down, and that one is actually a little bit off center, but that's okay. I'm going to give the paper another spray. All right, this one here. This brush may be just too wide. I think that's okay. I'm really just trying to get started. Reflections are interesting. Most of watercolor, it's a one and done. You get in there, you either get it right or get it wrong, but reflections take a little bit of time to build up. Okay. All right, so now we've got our start. I'm going to darken up the bottom of this a little bit, and we're going to start working here. I'm going to grab some really thick yellow ochre, and we're going to darken it up to mimic, what's underneath this car here. I'm going to leave just that little gap of light there, and we're going to start working along. Okay, a little bit of that. Neutralize it a little bit for this car. Let's connect them. Okay, it's looking good. Pull that down a little bit. All right, it's always going to be darker up close to the car and then kind of lighten as it gets a little bit further away. I'll grab a little extra water. This is the one time where you can really use a bit of water to get things running here. Okay, now spray this again. I want to keep things nice and wet on the page. There's going to be a figure here, and I want to go ahead and get that reflection in there, right like that. Okay, and there's also going to be 2 reflections over here. So we're going to work those in. And I try to leave these gaps of light here. It's okay if you don't, but you do not want to get your foreground all muddied up. The thing that makes these reflections look good is the contrast of light and dark. Too often when I see people do these rainy day scenes, they end up with skies that are too dark and foregrounds that are too dark. Really the only difference between this and a light day is really the reflection. It's kind of the illusion of darkness. But anyways, let's keep working here. I'm going to add some more dark paint down here at the bottom of this reflection. Right like that. I'll darken this up a little bit. I'm just kind of using the brush to inject a little color in there, a little pigment. And now we're going to start turning it into a believable reflection. What you want to do is pick a color. Anything. I've got some lavender here, and we're going to start injecting different colors into this reflection. Reflections can be really complex, and they're not just one tone. So I'm going to take this paper towel here, and now I'm going to start to soften where areas of light are and start to pull the reflection down a little bit, right? You never see a reflection with these really sharp lines, so I'm gonna start to soften everything up. I'm gonna take this paper towel, kind of roll it into a, I don't know, a little nub there. And I'm gonna come through the gaps of these cars and just kind of dab. It'll soften, but also help kind of maintain some of that light in there. We're going to keep working. All right. Again, I mentioned it's always going to be darkest right under the car. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit more paint over there and just let it bleed down. I'm not gonna touch a whole lot. I'll add a little bit of extra paint here as well. I'm just going to let the watercolor do its thing. I'm going to try not to touch it. Okay, now I'm going to add another color in here. I'm going to grab some of that Mayan Orange, right? And I'm just going to pull through, right like that. Right, that looks nice. I'm going to grab some darker paint and just go right down here at the bottom. Okay, let's give it another spray. Keep it very wet, and we're going to let this reflection sit for a minute. I'm going to come back in with this paper towel and re-soften things up. It's a very, I don't know, you got to slowly work into it. Okay, now this paint here didn't quite run as I'd hoped, so I'm going to just inject it down a little bit there. Okay, let's go in here and see if we want to add anything to our building though. While we're letting that dry, I'm going to add dark roof line here. That right there is just it's a neutral gray, Joseph Z neutral gray from Daniel Smith. And I don't know, let's make it fun. Let's get some Cobalt Blue. I'm just gonna dab above these those windows there. Don't know, could be blue shutters or something. Just to add a little color. All right. Now let's come back in here and let's work our reflection a bit more. So again, coming in here, I'm using this to create that very even transition of light to dark. And I'm coming into where there's light supposed to be shining through and working it along. I'm going to put this paper towel into a knob, or somewhat of a point. I'm going to dab along and try to maintain those gaps of light. Okay, I do it right here. And I'm always standing up and looking. I want to have really vertical lines. That's also a key to reflections. Everything's going to be vertical. Add a little gap there, just between those two figures. And this is starting to look nice. I'm going to take our brush here, just grab some pure Cobalt Blue, kind of run some lines there. Okay, we're going to leave it alone for a minute. We're going to come back and work the same thing again. But you'll notice I'm adding in different tones and colors. I do not like the way that Cobalt Blue turned out on these windows though, so I'm kind of scraping that out. Grab this paper towel. I'm going to just blot a little bit here and there, just to add a little interest to our scene. I'm going to take and try to smooth this out a little bit over here. Okay. Let's just make some vertical lines. I'm going to darken some things up in here. Again, I want to keep it darker towards the horizon there. All right, this is reflections dried a little. Let's come back in. Let's work it down. I'm just very lightly patting. Okay, very, very light. And I'm not coming all the way to the end of our paper here. I'm leaving, I want to have this nice dark area along the bottom to kind of help solidify the shape of the reflection. Okay, I got a weird shape going there on my paper towel. Okay, let's see. That's looking pretty good so far. I'm going to add something here. I'm going to take my palette knife. This always is a nice effect. I'm going to add some street lines here, and it really starts to look like a reflection. I'm pretty pleased with this so far. I'm just trying to squint a little bit, and I think I'm a little light in here. And so I'm just going to take and dab my brush. I'm not going to use it like a brush. And as long as this is still wet, it should smooth itself out. But it just looked a little light through there, so I'm adding a little more paint. I'm going to add just a little bit here as well. Okay. I'm going to add a little underneath this car. This car looks pretty good. Okay. It's looking very, very nice. The last thing I'm going to do, add a little bit more of these reflections here, just to give them a little more oomph. Spray the paper again. Got to keep this thing wet. You have got to keep it wet. That is one of the keys. All right. Let's dab down this way. And again, I'm just poking the brush in the shadow, or excuse me, in the reflection. And I'm going to let, oh my gosh, you know what? I completely forgot about this reflection over here. That needs to be darkened up a little bit. All right. So far that looks pretty good. I'm going to come in here. Add one more very dark, kind of some dark lines like that. I'm going to sit back and I'll probably blend it one more time, and I think we'll be done with the reflection. Now, there are some other cars here in the distance that I cannot forget about, but I'm just going to do like that. I'll come back in and try to work their reflections in a second. I'm going to add a dark line to the top of the bodies of these cars. They're going to be facing backwards, or I guess their rear ends are facing us. So we're going to have some tail lights on there, but I still like to have that dark line up there. I don't know why, it just helps cars read a little bit better. I'm going to get some pure water, and we're going to work some little baby reflections here coming off these cars. We did these a little late, but you know what? That is okay. I think it's still going to read well. Yep. Right, like that. All right, let's come in here. I'm going to blend this one last time. Okay, lighten it there. Let's work through this gap. And you just got to be patient with your reflections. I'm just dabbing here. I'm not wiping. I'm never going to wipe through a reflection. Okay. Just dabbing along. Okay. So far, I think that looks pretty good. The only thing I'm wondering... Yep. That is looking nice. I need to touch this up a little bit over here. I messed up a little bit. I needed to have some more dark over there on that side, but that's okay. I'm going to pull that back just a touch. Let's sharpen those lines where we've got our driving lines. I think that's going to be okay. And it looks pretty dark right now, but you've got to remember that if it looks right when you paint it, then it's going to be wrong because it is going to lighten. I'm going to dry off these windshields a little bit. Okay. All right, let's do... Oops, that is the wrong side of that brush. I'm going to add some kind of lines through this little gazebo awning thing. I think this looks good for now. I think we're going to let this dry, and we're going to come back and add in our figures and dry brush in some details. So give me just a minute, and we will be back. All right, we are back, and we are almost done. As you can see, this shadow, or excuse me, I keep calling it a shadow. This reflection has dried much lighter. I'm going to give this a little water, and we're going to work in our figures here, and this is really going to bring this thing to life. Once we start adding in these more kind of contrasting darks, everything's going to start coming together. I got these two kind of walking out of the shadows there. I'm going to give this person a little bit of give them a jacket. Okay. You can see their reflections look nice. Now I would have liked to get this a little bit darker under here, and I may just try to pull around them a little bit more. The darker you can get that, I mean, that's what makes these guys kind of come to life. I'm going to pull some vertical lines there. Let's go ahead and get this individual painted over here. Let's do, I don't know what color I want to do. Do a sienna, kind of to a fade color there. That'll be fine. Again, I want to reach in and use kind of some pure pigment here because this is what's going to help our figures stand out. We've got to add in some darker colors. That looks kind of odd. I'm going to fix that. Put in a face there though. I guess it kind of looks like another jacket. That's fine. We'll go with that. Okay. All right. Let's add some more people. I'm going to grab my kind of ratty looking brush if I can find it. Where did I put that? Oh, it's on the ground. All right. And we're going to get just some kind of pure pigment here and blot in some figures out there. All right, we'll do one there. Maybe do a kind of a red figure and another one there. Just to kind of liven up the scene a little bit. It's okay, we don't have a reflection for that person, but that's no big deal. Grab some of that burnt sienna. Add some faces in here. I may come back and add a little white. Well, we will add some white gouache on a lot of this. All right, what else do we want? Maybe some vertical lines. Maybe we'll have some street post signs or some lamp posts there. Something like that. All right. What else do we want? I'm gonna grab this. Let's do some. Again, just adding some kind of abstract detail to things. Just trying to break up some shapes. Yeah, I think that looks pretty nice. All right, let's get our gouache out. Okay, we're going to use this to add some highlights on things. And I think we may use it to do some taillights as well. I'll show you a little trick. Okay, let's do that there. Get those guys brought out of the darkness. Okay. Yeah, when you get that gouache going, I mean, it really makes a difference. I'm just going to add some little bits of white here and there just to help. Again, we're breaking up shapes. We're adding interest to things. Maybe this is a taxi with a thing on top. Draw some vertical lines there. Yep. Something like that. Okay. And it's really starting to come together here. All right. I'm going to do something a little tricky here. I'm gonna cheat. I want these taillights to really stand out. Kind of almost have a glow to them. And I don't have a color that's going to do that over here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a little of that gouache down there. I'm going to take this ratty brush, get some of that Mayan Orange, and just kind of mix it up down here. We're going to use that for our taillights. And you'll see it really brings them out, almost gives them kind of a glow. And what we can do from there, I want to be careful. I don't want to get all this gouache in my watercolor here, but what we can do is use it to do some little reflections. Just pulling straight down. Maybe just get a little bit more paint for these. Yeah, right like that. And that is just about it, I think. I'm taking a look. Is there anything else I want to add? I don't think so. I'm going to come in here and we'll go ahead and sign this. And we'll see if there's anything else we want to do. Maybe I'll stick a tie on this gentleman. Although that was way too thick. Darn it. Alright, it's just a red coat or something. Okay, I think that's all done. Let's get this tape off so we can take a look at our final product. And we'll go over, what did we do well, what did we do not so well. Okay. Let's see here. Oops. And you know what? I've got a little run through there. All you have to do to fix that, get a little water on your brush, dab it out, and then just take a paper towel. It cleans right up. Okay, overall, pretty pleased with the painting here. I think that I would have liked a little bit more of a transition. Again, I mentioned that it needs to be darker underneath the vehicles when we're talking about the reflection and then get lighter. I think it ended up being a little too dark here. And that's on me. I went back and I added, and I probably should not have. Other than that, I mean, I think it looks pretty good. Maybe some darker contrast down here at the bottom. So I really want it to fade the reflections from dark to light to then dark again here. And I wish there was more of a differentiation between the light and dark here. I think the buildings look fine. They weren't really the showstopper or the the point of the painting, so they're a little bit abstract, which is fine. But yeah, other than that, I think it looks good. So again, if you made it all the way to the end, I appreciate it. Consider subscribing to the channel, and if you like this, I will have actually a couple of versions of this painting done for sale in the store. So thanks again, and keep on painting.